can stop the Lord Almighty? Who can stop the Lord Almighty? No one. Who can stop the Lord? Oh, sing it over the battle. Stop the Lord Almighty. Who can stop the Lord Almighty? There is no one who can stop the Lord Almighty. Who can stop the Our God is the Lion of Judah. He's roaring with power and fighting our battles, and every knee will bow before Him. Our God is the Lamb that was slain for the sin of the world. His blood breaks the chains, and every knee will bow before the Lion and the Lamb. Oh, every knee will bow before Him. Father of kindness, you have poured out grace. You brought me out of darkness. You have filled me with peace. Oh, giver of mercy, you're my help in time of need. Lord, I can't help but sing. Faithful you are, faithful forever you will be. Faithful God you are, and all your promises are yes and amen. And all your promises are yes and amen. Beautiful Savior, you have brought me near. You pulled me from the ashes. You have broken every curse. Blessed Redeemer, you have set His captive free. Yes, Lord. Lord, I can't help but sing. Tell the Lord how faithful He's been to you. Faithful God, you are. Faithful forever you will be. Faithful God, you are. And all your promises are yes and amen. And all your promises are yes my hope in. I trust in you and you alone. And I trust in you alone. I put my hope in. And I trust in you and you alone. I trust you alone. You and you alone. I trust in you and you alone. You and you alone. I trust you alone. You and you alone. I trust in you and you alone. And I trust in you alone. I put my hope in. And I trust in you and you alone. Lord, you're great. And I trust him. You alone. I put my hope in. And I trust in you and you alone. I will rest in your promises. My confidence is your faithfulness. Let him hear you. Is your faithfulness, faithful God. You are faithful forever. You will tell the Lord now. Faithful you are, and all your promises are yes and amen. Come on, come on. And all your promises are yes and amen. Woo! And all your promises are yes and amen. Thank you, Lord. Yes, Lord. Hallelujah. You know, guys, how you sometimes you just have to rest in a promise. You know, life may not be as easy some days as it is on others, but we have that wonderful promise from Romans 8:28, where God says he works all things together for your good. So you can rest in a promise that God has given you because he has your best interest always at heart. So it makes it easy to say, God, you are faithful. And we just pause for a minute and we say, thank you, God, for your faithfulness. Thank you for the rest that we can have in you. Amen. Amen. Can we applaud him one more time, church, for his faithfulness? Yes. We love you, Lord. Thank you. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Wow. Good morning, A2. It's so good to see you in the house this morning. This is what we call our connect time, where we go from one side of the room to the other. So find somebody you don't know, shake their hand, hug their neck this morning.
Good morning. We are so glad that you've joined us today. I'd like to give a special welcome to our first, second, and third time guests. And if you're joining us online with A2 TV. My name is Zach, and we are so excited to continue Not Finished Yet here at A2 Church. But before we do that, here are a few things happening at A2 Church.
Baby dedication is a spiritual act where parents commit to provide their children with a godly example and a spiritual foundation for life. At A2 Church, we host baby dedication twice a year, and the next opportunity for you to dedicate your child is for Christmas baby dedication on Sunday, December 10th. To sign up or to get more information, send me an email at cnorton@a2church.org.
Our life group semester will soon be coming to a close, and we're already looking forward to and planning for our spring semester of life groups. If you're currently participating or leading a life group, I hope that your experience surpassed your expectations, and if it didn't, please let me know why at sam@a2church.org, because we want to get better. Now's the time to start thinking about attending or leading a life group next semester. If you've never been in a life group, I can tell you that many lifelong relationships have been born in that small circle. You got nothing to lose and new friendships to gain. If you've ever considered leading a life group, I encourage you to pray about taking that next step. We have what's known as a free market system, so you get to lead in an area that's on your heart. Cooking, cycling, running, Bible study, marriage groups, singles, or ultimate frisbee, it doesn't matter. We'll train you, equip you for success, and cover you and your group in prayer. We'll provide more info in the coming weeks, but now is the time to start planning on being in an A2 life group.
At A2, we don't have volunteers. We have the A-Team, and there's no better time to be part of the A-Team than the holiday season. We're looking for people to help us make A2 the friendliest and most loving place in town because we expect more guests than ever before, especially on Christmas Eve. So if you have a heart for showing the love of Jesus, especially at this time of year, let us know by signing up on your connection card today.
Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope that God is able to minister to you through this worship experience.
Good morning. All right, you guys are awake. Everybody's happy because yesterday everybody got big wins. It's a good day, right? Well, listen, we're so glad that you're with us this morning. If you are a first, second, or third time guest, welcome or welcome back. The only thing we're going to ask you to do is to fill out one of these. It's our connection card. They're in the seat backs in front of you. So go ahead and reach out in front of you, both guests and regulars. Grab one of these connection cards, fill it out, let us know that you're here. And on the bottom of that connection card, you can actually sign up for some of the stuff that they just announced. You can also write down a prayer need. We have an awesome prayer team that would love to partner with you in prayer. They gather on Wednesday mornings and they pray throughout the week. So if there's any kind of need, I mean, how many of us have some kind of need, right? We all have some kind of need. We have something that we can ask God for. So I want to invite everybody, write down that need. We just talked about this idea that God can come through, right? And we trust in Him. So I want to encourage you, take that time, write those things down. And if you call A2 home, now's also a great time to prepare to honor God with His tithe and our offering. If you're a guest, please don't feel any obligation to give. We hope that this worship experience is our gift to you. While you're filling some of that out, I want to go ahead and highlight two quick announcements. And the first one is on December 17th, we are celebrating our No Limits Christmas. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's a Christmas party. This is an opportunity for you to sponsor some kids from inner city, and this is an opportunity for us to give back. We love this. Each year we have an opportunity to bless families, to bless kids, and there's just something about that joy that you get when you see kids' faces light up and they get those gifts. I mean, I remember, I'm sure you guys can remember being little kids and running down the stairs and getting to the Christmas tree and seeing all those things there. You're doing that for some kid in the city. You're giving them an opportunity to not come downstairs with nothing, but to come down and have that smile and that joy and that excitement. So we want to encourage you guys to go ahead, and there's a table set up in the foyer. Stop by that table. That's an opportunity for you to sponsor. It's also an opportunity for you guys to go ahead and sign up to volunteer, to serve on that day. I think that's all I've got in terms of the Christmas. No, wait, I got one more thing. Ugly Christmas sweater. We're going to wear ugly Christmas sweaters that day. It's going to be an awesome time. Hey, we want you guys to find the ugliest one you can find. I got mine already picked out, so you don't wait any longer. You need to get one. I got somebody who says he thinks he got mine, but I don't know. So plan on that. And the last thing that I've got is next week we are celebrating in water baptism. And water baptism is a public declaration of your faith. It's saying to everyone, listen, I'm all in for Jesus. And so we want to encourage you, if you've committed or recommitted your life, maybe you've made that decision recently and you want to say, I want to take that next step, I want to invite you to sign up on that connection card, and we'll follow up with you later this week. That's all that I have for right now, and Pastor Chris is actually going to continue our series, Not Finished Yet. Would you welcome to the stage?
All right, let's try this. Good morning, A2 Church. Let's try it again. Good morning, A2 Church. It is awesome to see you this morning. I am so glad you're here. Those of you in the house, we're glad you're here. And if you're joining by A2 TV, thank you for joining us. Right now, whether you're on Facebook or the web page, invite somebody to watch with you because we believe God is going to meet with us in a great way. Hey, I do want to mention two things and dive into the message. So go ahead and take out those notes so that you're ready to jump. But this morning at 10:30, right after we finish this experience, if you're interested in learning more about A2, if you're interested in learning more about A2, Sam Maniscalco, our life groups director, the team, they'll meet you back in the connection room that's right across from the men's restroom. Meet them back there. Starts at 10:30. Refreshments, a great time today. It's called Discover A2 Church. That's at 10:30. And one more thought. Please don't read it while I'm talking to you because that will just mess me all up. But I wrote to you a few weeks ago. I just sat down and looked over what God has done for us in 2017. And this has been a phenomenal year. God has been incredibly good to A2 Church. Let's give him a thanksgiving. Yeah, give him a praise for that. So I wrote you a letter just giving you some of the highlights. I could have given you a lot more, but I didn't want it to be, you already accused me of being long-winded, so I didn't want it to be really long-winded. So I did that, and here's what I'm gonna do this Wednesday. This Wednesday, I've hijacked our last midweek connect of the year. I've hijacked that, taken that over, so Wednesday morning at 7 a.m., I'm just gonna give you a Yay God, the day before Thanksgiving, give you a Yay God report on some of the really cool things we've seen God do this year. So I hope you'll join me for the last midweek connect of the year, and then we're going to take some of those back up in the new year. In fact, we've got our Advent devotional blog that will begin, not Facebook Live, but a devotional blog will actually begin the week of December 3rd. So a lot of stuff planned for you. Take out those notes. We are in a series called Not Finished Yet. If you have ever felt like maybe you're too old, maybe you're too young, if you've ever felt like maybe I failed one too many times, if you've ever felt like, wow, my past is just way too painful for me to experience God and the life he intended for me, here's what we want to say to you. You are not finished yet because God is not finished yet. Just say that out loud, but I want you to change the pronouns and say, I am not finished yet because God is not finished yet. Are you ready? I am not finished yet because God is not finished yet. Now, some of you said that like you don't believe it. You said it like you're a Tennessee fan watching LSU just run smack dab over the top of you during one of your final games of the season. I want you to say it like you actually believe it. Are you ready? Say, I am not finished yet because God is not finished yet. Last week we looked at 2 Corinthians chapter 7, and it is an incredible book. It was written by a guy named Paul the Apostle. Just so you know who he is, he's a guy who launched missionary movements. He's a guy who planted dozens, maybe hundreds of churches. He's the guy that wrote about half of your New Testament. We're talking about a dude who anyone who's a historian would describe this guy as tough as nails. But in 2 Corinthians, the entire book, in fact, he gives us this glimpse into his life, and he's at a period in his life where he wonders whether it's curtains for him. He wonders whether things are all over. In fact, last week we looked at 2 Corinthians chapter 7. We'll not look at it this morning. And Paul says, guys, when we reached Macedonia, we faced all kinds of problems. There was opposition from the outside. There were all kinds of fears going on in the inside, but God, who encourages the discouraged, he encouraged me. Anybody here ever had God encourage you when you were at the end of your rope? This morning, I want to look at another passage where Paul's giving us a window. It too is from 2 Corinthians. It's from chapter 4. It's going to come up on the screen, and we're going to read it aloud and together. There are some passages we ought to memorize. And this is one of those passages that if you're really struggling, if you feel like you're up against it, you need to memorize this passage. You ready? Let's say it out loud. We are hard pressed on every side, but we are not crushed. We are perplexed, but not driven to despair. Quitting is not an option. We are hunted down, but never abandoned by God. We may be knocked down, but we are never knocked out. I want you to bring the first part of that verse back up, David, and just leave it there for a moment. And I want you to think through your life in light of this passage. Earlier this week, I met with the father of a family friend who on Monday was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And the doctor's estimate was on Monday that life expectancy may be 3 months. Later in the week, I watched as a young woman poured out her heart to me after being told she needs one more test, one more really expensive, physically draining procedure. And the last few years have presented one physical challenge after another for this woman, one painful, life-altering challenge after another. They've been relentless. Over the past several weeks, I've met with people whose marriages are reeling and on life support. I've met with people who have been unemployed for significant periods of time. It's not that they can't get a job. It's that the job in their chosen field, their desired pursuit in life, at this point has reached an impasse. I could go on and on and on. One of the things you can count on in this broken, messed up world is that in every area of life, career, work, family, romance, health, relationships, ministry, calling, every meaningful aspect of life, in every aspect of life, stuff happens. Pain happens. Setbacks happen. Failure happens. Disappointments happen. It's not if. It's inevitable. And this is what Paul says you can expect. 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 8 and 9. He says this is what you can bet on. This is what you can count on in life in a broken, messed up world. If you want to build a dynamic, life-giving marriage, if you want to pursue physical health as a life goal, if your desire is to chase God's calling in missions, if you dream of planting a church, if your heart is to serve the poor, if your goal is to raise godly kids, if you aspire to build a thriving business that serves the community, leaves a legacy for your family, if you want to pursue a dream in music, theater, film, or the arts, if your desire is to leave this world a lot better than you found it, if you want to follow, serve, love Jesus with all of your heart, soul, mind, and strength, Paul says this is what you can count on. Now, Paul is facing this not because he's doing stuff wrong. He's up against it because he's doing stuff right. Sometimes we misinterpret our problems as being evidence that maybe we've missed the call of God. Not Paul. He's pursuing the plan of God, but he says, in fact, I'm going to give you a glimpse of exactly how desperate this got. He opens the first chapter of 2 Corinthians by telling us just how desperate things were. But he says, this is what you can count on. So let's say it again. And I want you to notice these paradoxes. 4 paradoxes are contained in 2 brief verses. He says, this is the way life is. This is what life has thrown at me. This is how relentless life has been. But right on the heels of saying, this is what you can expect, he follows it up by saying, but every time life throws me this is how I'm going to punch back. I love it. You ready to read it? See if this relates to you. Maybe you live in fantasy land. Maybe you've got the 401k already that's worth millions and you don't have to work another day in your life. Maybe you are so physically healthy, you give Tom Cruise and the dude who plays Thor a run for their money. I mean, you look for opportunities to take your shirt off. That's how good you look. Maybe you can't relate to this passage. Maybe you can't. Or maybe you're like me. You live in the real world. Listen to these paradoxes. Listen to what Paul says life is throwing at him, but listen to his response in the middle of it all. You ready? Let's read it out loud. We are hard pressed on every side, but we are not crushed. By the way, if you want to know how to read it, the first part of each sentence is the problem. The second part is Paul's response to the problem. So, if you want to picture this as a motivational speech, say the first part down, say the second part gritty. I don't mean happy. I mean gritty. I mean like you're fierce. That's one of my favorite words of 2017, fierce. You ready? We are hard pressed on every side, but we are not crushed. We are perplexed, but not driven to despair. Quitting is not an option. We are hunted down, but never abandoned by God. We may be knocked down, but we are never knocked out. Some of you are getting it. Thank you for that golf applause on that one. Now, I don't know how you imagine things, but here's what I know about Paul. Paul was a sports dude. He was a sports guy. He used all kinds of metaphors from the sports world of his day. He especially loved the metaphors of wrestling and boxing. Love them. For those of you who do not like movies where the good guy wins and the bad guy loses, for those of you who don't like those movies where the bad guy just gets boom, 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 pounded at the end of it all, don't read Paul. You won't like him. He likes it when the good guy wins and the bad guy loses. In fact, one of my favorite scenes, this will not surprise you. If you know me, I love the Rocky movie series. Love them. I love the fact that now we've got a spin-off of the Rocky movie series called Creed. I loved Adonis Creed. I love the first movie. I'm anxiously looking forward to the second movie. I love that series of movies. But in Rocky Balboa, which is sort of the end of the Rocky movie saga, Rocky is in retirement, 30 years since the first bell rang, reigning heavyweight champ Mason the Lion Dixon. You can't write it any better than Sylvester Stallone right there. Mason the Lion Dixon challenges Rocky to come out of retirement and take him on in a, quote, exhibition fight. And anybody watching the movie, they know this is not going to be an exhibition fight. Rocky can't fight exhibition style. He's going to put it all on the line. So to the surprise of everybody, including Rocky's young adult son, Rocky agrees to the fight. And once it's announced, and of course the fanfare is incredible, people are going crazy, and it puts Rocky and his entire family under the spotlight, and his young adult son is upset by it. And in my opinion, one scene, Rocky gives his young adult son some of the greatest advice in movie history. Oh yeah, we're gonna go to the movies for 2 minutes. You ready? This, you can leave the lights up. You don't have to turn them down. We can see it with them up because I want to preach right after this. Because this is preaching. Now, for those of you who have golf clapped thus far, it is okay at the end of this to get like I got when I was watching it for the first time in the theater. I had Cameron with me. She was just a little girl. I wasn't certain that she would enjoy it at all. I mean, she was really, really little when this first came out. And we're watching this, and I get so excited. And I walk out, and I wonder, has she liked it? And she said, I loved it. I was ready to find somebody to just box for a moment. This is the scene. Go ahead and play it, David.
You ain't gonna believe this, but you used to fit right here. I'd hold you up and say to your mother, this kid's gonna be the best kid in the world. This kid's gonna be somebody better than anybody ever knew. And you grew up good and wonderful. It was great just watching you every day. It was like a privilege. Then the time come for you to be your own man and take on the world, and you did. But somewhere along the line, you changed. You stopped being you. You let people stick a finger in your face and tell you you're no good. And when things got hard, you started looking for something to blame, like a big shadow. Let me tell you something you already know. The world ain't all sunshine and rainbows. It's a very mean and nasty place, and I don't care how tough you are, it will beat you to your knees and keep you there permanently if you let it. You, me, or nobody is gonna hit as hard as life. But it ain't about how hard you hit.
Yeah.
It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done. Now, if you know what you're worth, now go out and get what you're worth. But you gotta be willing to take the hits and not pointing fingers saying you ain't where you want to be because of him or her or anybody. Cowards do that, and that ain't you. You're better than that.
I love this line.
I'm always gonna love you no matter what. No matter what happens. You're my son, you're my blood. You're the best thing in my life. But until you start believing in yourself, you ain't gonna have a life. Don't forget to visit your mother.
You can fade it now. Anybody? David, one more time. Now I think we've got how we need to read 2 Corinthians 4, verse 8. So one more time, bring it up. Because if anything has given us the context, that film clip gave us the context. I don't know what you're going through. I don't know how hard it might be. I don't know whether if it's something physical, something spiritual, something emotional, something relational, something financial. Paul gives us hope in this passage. You ready? We are hard pressed on every side, but we are not crushed. We are perplexed, but not driven to despair. Quitting is not an option. We are hunted down, but never abandoned by God. We may be knocked down, but we are never knocked out. Now, let me give you 3 truths. They're going to come up on the screen, and they're not in your notes, but you might want to jot them down because this is the truth about life, and this is the truth about you. You will get hit. You will go down, but you can get up. Man, that'll preach right there. I'll say it again. You will get hit, you will go down, but you can get up. You are not finished yet because God is not finished yet. I want us one more time to give God a loud clap offering of praise. Give it up to him. So let me give you 4 reasons you're not finished yet that come right out of this text. And I'll probably just buzz these, but fill in the blanks for those of you who are type A personalities and you need to have your blanks filled in. Number 1, 4 reasons we're not finished yet. Number 1, because pressure will not crush us. We're hard pressed on every side. The word press comes from a Greek verb that means to pressure. It was sometimes used of walking through a really, really big crowd when all kinds of people pressed in on you. It was sometimes used of placing grapes in a vat and walking on those grapes to squeeze the juice out of them. It's a really broad word, and it refers to emotional, mental, spiritual, psychological pressure. Paul says we are under all kinds of pressure. I love the cotton patch gospel here. I put it for you in your notes. We catch it from every direction, but we don't let them squeeze the life out of us. Now Paul gives us, some of us are complaining, but we need a picture for what Paul's up against. It will not come up on the screen, but you might want to jot the address down. 2 Corinthians 1, verse 8. He introduces the whole book to tell us about his pressure. He says all of the hardships we passed through crushed us beyond our ability to endure. We were so completely overwhelmed that we were about to give up entirely. It felt like we had a death sentence written upon our hearts, and we still feel like it to this day. It's taught us to lose all faith in ourselves and to place our trust in the God who raises the dead. Paul says things were so bad for me that it was like I was going to die, and that's when I stopped depending on me. And I started depending on God because I remembered the story. He's the God who brings the dead back to life. James challenges us when we're under pressure. James 1, verse 2, consider it a sheer gift, friends, when tests, challenges come at you from all sides. You know that under pressure, your faith life is forced into the open and it shows its true colors. So don't try to get out of anything prematurely. Let it do its work so you become mature and well developed, not deficient in any way. Get this, pressure doesn't crush us. It brings out the best in us. I'll try to explain. We have had to really adapt our eating habits the last couple of years, which has caused us to look for easier ways to prepare meals when you're on the go. Because the tendency in our life had been to grab something really quick at a restaurant and then take it home, and you can't eat the way we need to eat and do that. So my family discovered something, you probably discovered it long ago, called an Instant Pot. Sort of a retread of the old-fashioned pressure cooker. Anybody remember old-fashioned pressure cookers? My mama used these when we canned beans and so forth and so on. Here's how the promotional material for the Instant Pot reads. It reads, an Instant Pot is a programmable pressure cooker. It speeds up the cooking process by 2 to 6 times, using up to 70% less energy. It is fast, easy, smart, and healthy. Now, let me just say the last part. It's fast, easy, smart, and healthy. I just want to note, that depends on who's using the Instant Pot. Because I got the assignment one day of cooking the meal in the Instant Pot, and when you've never used it before, it wasn't necessarily fast, at least not at first. I got to thinking, in fact, I dreamed about the Instant Pot Friday night. I know, you don't want to visit my dream world. I've been thinking about 2 Corinthians 4, verse 8 all day. I've been thinking about James 1, 2, And I got up dreaming about the Instant Pot. And I thought, that's just like life. Because if you haven't used this contraption, I had the joy of using it a few weeks ago when all of our family was in, Janet's family was in, and we got the big idea that we wanted chili because it was cool. It hasn't been cold yet in Birmingham. Understand it's going to get cold tonight. It was cool, and everybody said, we want chili. Dad said, well, I'll fix chili. By the way, I fixed it and nobody showed up to eat it, but I did fix it. I grabbed all of this stuff and I put it in that pot. Just imagine your ideal chili recipe. I put it in the pot. You can actually saute the meat in the pot. And after I sauteed it, I know you will love this. I just left all that good old juice from the meat laying in there, baby. Oh, yeah. Drain off that fat. No, don't drain off that fat. Slurp it up. It's good in chili. I added all the other ingredients in the Instant Pot, and then I fastened the lid appropriately. It's called a lid lock. And then you just press the on button. And at first, nothing. It just said on and asked me how long I wanted this stuff to cook. And I told it 45 minutes, but forever, it just said on. And what I didn't know, what was happening inside that Instant Pot, is the pressure was built. As the heat rose, the pressure was building and building and building and building. And finally, when the thing became fully pressurized, it hit 45 and started counting down. And I just sat there waiting. It was a Saturday night, so I was working on a message. And I would work a little while, and since none of the family was showing up, I went back to look at when I was going to get to eat my chili. It kept counting down. And finally, when it got to 0, I heard a little noise. But I called one of my family members to make sure I didn't kill myself. I had enough sense to know that dealing with an Instant Pot meant that it was pressurized. So I needed to figure out how to bleed off the pressure. And I might mind you, I learned an important lesson there. Because at first I tried to bleed off the pressure in a way that exposed my hand to the raw steam coming out of the top of the pot. It did not feel good, ladies and gentlemen. In fact, I might have said a word or two out loud that some of you would have maybe said, oh, I wonder if he's a Christian. I actually learned to navigate that little pressure release thing. And I just you said, you can wait for it to diffuse. I know you can wait for it to diffuse. But when you're ready to eat chili, you don't want to wait for it to diffuse. I had to get the pressure off so I could unlock the lid. Now, I want to tell you something. The ingredients I put in there, beef, and I can't remember all the ingredients. I know there were lots of tomatoes, and there were bell peppers. And yes, there was some weird stuff. Remember, I told you we had to change our diet. So there was carrots in our chili. I know, don't think bad of me. It was actually good. There was carrots in our chili. Sweet potatoes were in this chili. I mean, there was some crazy concoctions because the recipe said this is healthy and this is what you can eat if you're eating on this particular diet. All of that was in there, so I had to bleed that off. And I guarantee you the ingredients in there didn't feel like it was fast, easy, smart, or healthy because they felt the heat and they felt the pressure. But when the pressure was finally off and the lid had finally been undone and I opened it up, it was a feast fit for this king. I not only ate it that day, I ate it the next day. I ate it the next day. I was eating it still on Tuesday because the Instant Pot and the pressure contained had produced something beautiful. Listen to me. Here's what I dreamed about Friday night when I went to bed. Life sometimes can feel like a pressure cooker and it never feels fast, easy, easy, smart, or healthy. But if you'll let God keep cooking up his personal gumbo, one of the days, he's going to release the pressure. He's going to open up the pot. You're going to look in and you're going to say, oh my gosh, I would have never chosen that. But look at what God produced while the heat was on and the pressure was rising. He brought something great out of this period, and I want to thank him for his grace to get me through it. Pressure will not crush us. Let me fill in the blanks and then let's worship. 2, uncertainty will not discourage us. We're perplexed but not in despair. I'm glad that Paul said that, because the word perplex means to be at a loss. Here's what Paul was saying. This is Paul, the guy who wrote half your New Testament. He was saying, I can't figure out what's going on. I'm confused. I'm baffled. I don't understand why this is happening to me. I don't understand why God is letting this happen to me. Now, let me just ask, any of you brave enough to admit you felt like that before? Why is this happening to me? Why is God letting this happen to me? That's Paul. He says, but even though I have these questions, even though I'm perplexed, I refuse to give up. I refuse to give in. I love the Passion Translation here. At times we don't know what to do, but quitting is not an option. I love the Message. We're not certain what to do, but we know that God knows what to do. Here's the way I put it for you in your notes if you're filling in blanks. Even when we don't know what to do, God always knows what to do. Here's the implication. Trust him. Trust him. Third reason, we're not finished yet. Resistance never means God has abandoned us. We're hunted down, but we're never abandoned by God. The word persecuted or hunted down, it means to pursue or to hunt, like a hunter pursues his game or his prey. One man said it like this: I don't know the key to success, but the key to failure is trying to please everybody. Paul felt like he couldn't please anybody. He was constantly being hounded by the Jewish religious authorities. They attacked his character. They questioned his motives. They mocked his message. They belittled his appearance. They made fun of his giftedness. They threatened his life repeatedly. He says, I am constantly being hunted down, but I know this, I've never been abandoned by God. Maybe you feel hunted. Here's what I'm here to tell you. God has never abandoned you. He never will abandon you. If you mark in your notes, I want you to underline something. That word abandon, we're hunted down but never abandoned, or some places it gets translated forsaken. That word is a great, great, great word. It's a word used by Jesus when Jesus was hanging on the cross in his dying hours, and he cried out, my God, why have you," anybody remember the rest of it? "Why have you forsaken or abandoned me?" It's the same exact Greek word. Why is that important, Chris? I'll tell you why. Because Paul, in his writings, is big on the idea of substitution. The idea that Jesus died for our sins and in our place. And I think Paul using that phrase, we're being hunted down, but we've never been abandoned by God. I believe what Paul is implying is this: Jesus was abandoned by God. Jesus was forsaken by God. So we would never be abandoned or forsaken by God. Because Jesus took God's abandonment in our place. That means the worst life can throw at us is never an implication that God has walked off and left us. He is always there. In fact, Psalm 34:18, he says it this way: I am close to those who have a broken spirit. I am near those who are crushed in heart. So you can fill in these blanks there in your notes. Resistance isn't an indication of God's absence. It's a promise of God's presence. I'm going to give you the fourth as James comes. Getting knocked down never means we've been knocked out. 4 reasons we're not finished yet. Pressure will not crush us. Uncertainty will not discourage us. Resistance never means God has abandoned us. And 4, getting knocked down never means we've been knocked out. For 7 years, I served as a children's pastor. And I love that period. It was transformational for me. Really transformational for me. But when you're serving as a children's pastor, and we would put on all kinds of big children's crusades, and I would search for creative things to do. So anything I heard in popular music or movie world that I felt could translate and create a moment, I would use. So back then, we didn't have all the availability we have today on the internet of Googling this, Googling that. This was before Google. So I looked this verse up. I was teaching on this verse, and I had a few translations. You had the King James Version, you had the NIV version. This was before the New Living Translation. The Living Bible was around. The Message had not been written yet. It was before all of that. But there was an obscure translation called the J.B. Phillips translation in the original Greek. And I've still got the original Bible. It's a little green Bible. It's just the New Testament. He didn't even get around to doing the Psalms. And if you use Bible Gateway, this is really cool. Bible Gateway has the Phillips translation on there. But I love this passage from J.B. Phillips. And I always wanted to preach on it because of the way he said it. Phillips said it like this: we may be knocked down, but we are never knocked out. Could you just say that out loud with me? Because that's something good. You ready? We may be knocked down, but we are never knocked out. Now, I wanted a way to illustrate this to the kids back then. So there was a popular song that played on the radio by a one-hit wonder called Chumbawamba. You know they're great when they've got a name like that, Chumbawamba. Chumbawamba. And they had this song, and I loved it. I loved it. And it said this: I get knocked down, but I get up again. Up again, I get knocked down, but I get up again. And some of the words, I can't remember what they said. I just love that. I thought, that's 2 Corinthians 4, verse 9. We're going to use this with the kids. And I was so excited. I did use it with the kids. We had a great time. Then somebody asked me, do you know what that song's about? I said, no. It's about getting knocked down and getting back up. They said, it's about getting knocked down because you're so stone cold drunk, you can't stand up. So you fall over drunk, but you get up and you get drunk again. That's what it's about, Chris. I said, don't tell the kids. They think it's about 2 Corinthians 4, 9. Don't tell them the truth. That's that true story. Mike Tyson famously said, everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth. What's your plan? I'm going to close by reading you 2 Corinthians 4, verse 7, that begins all of this. Because you see, it occurred to me that this could become just a self-help sermon if we don't read what Paul said in verse 7. So here's the way it reads in verse 7. We are like common clay jars that carry this glorious treasure within, so that the extraordinary overflow of power will be seen as God's, not ours. That's why we are hard pressed on every side, but not crushed. That's why we are hunted down, but never abandoned. That's why we get knocked down, but not knocked out. Why? Because of what's inside. Now get this. Paul says, you and I are nothing but clay pots, By the way, that is not a compliment. Clay pots can be beautiful. They can also be incredibly ordinary. The thing about all clay pots is this: they crack. In fact, there's a developing science going on in California. It's called psychoceramics. It's the study of crack pots. That's a joke. That's a joke, guys. Laugh. Terrible joke. I said California, not Alabama. You can laugh. Paul is saying you're nothing but a cracked pot. But God's put a treasure in you, and because of the treasure in you, you can't go down. David, one more time, bring up 2 Corinthians 4, verse 8. We've said it a lot, but remember, you can come onto the stage, team. We've said it a lot, but remember, I said this is one worth memorizing. So let's say it out loud. We are hard pressed on every side, but we are not crushed. We are perplexed, but not driven to despair. Quitting is not an option. We are hunted down, but never abandoned by God. We may be knocked down, but we are never knocked out. Why? Because of the treasure that's in. And that treasure, depending on how you read it, is either the gospel or the power of the Holy Spirit. You ready to pray? I want you to think about what you're facing right now, what's going on in your life. And I want you to remember, leave the lights up for just a moment, please. Leave them up for just a few moments because we need to do the connection card, and I want to say something about somebody that's in the room this morning. Think about what's going on in your life. I started by telling you about father of a family friend diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. When I said that, I didn't even know the gentleman was in the room. But I'm looking back over at Bob Flowers over to my right and your left. And we got that news Monday night. I was at my house and immediately sent off a text to our prayer team, and they happened to be having a prayer gathering right here. And I asked Greg Gilbert and Link Cassidy to join me to go over and anoint Bob. We went over and anointed him on Wednesday. I believe this is the precursor to more good news to come. On Monday, they had told him life expectancy of around 3 months. Thursday, they did a biopsy and started Monday, they told him there were no options. Thursday, they did a biopsy, started talking with him about options and chemotherapy, and it looks like the tide may be turning for Bob already. I believe God started answering our prayer. Deborah sent me a text, I think it was Thursday evening, and she says, I believe God has already started answering prayer and turning things for my dad. I believe that we are hard pressed, but we are never crushed. Why? This treasure within this clay pot is the power of the Holy Spirit that will not give up on us. What are you going through? I want you to give it to God right now. Let's pray. And it begins with surrender to Jesus. So I'm going to pray a surrender to Jesus. If you need to give your life to Jesus, just pray this prayer out loud and together. Just say, Heavenly Father, thank you for Jesus who died for my sins in my place. He was abandoned by God. So I never need to be abandoned by God. I trust Him with my life. Amen. Now the rest of you, whatever you're going through, I want you to give that to God now. Give it to Him. Father, you see the pain, the hurt, the challenges that are being submitted to you, surrendered to you right now. And I pray that you would begin to move in rescue of your people. Look this way for just a moment. If you just prayed that prayer, or if a challenge has come to mind that you want to surrender to God, Josh took a while to say, everybody's got a need. So I want everybody to take out those connection cards. Getting people to pray for you is powerful. So right now, if you came to Jesus, there's a place for you to mark that. If you need to tell this church about a need, there's a place for you to mark that. While you're completing that, those of you who call this place home, now's a good time to prepare to honor God with his tithe and our offering. I'm about to invite the ushers forward, and here's what we're gonna do for about 10 or 11 minutes. We're gonna worship Jesus. The greatest praise you can give to Jesus is praise offered in the middle of your pain. So they're gonna sing, and after the container passes you, that is your invitation to stand or to kneel. And after we worship for about 11 minutes, I'm gonna come back and invite prayer teams together. And then I pray if you have a need, you will bring that need to one of these teams, and I believe you can walk out of here knowing that God is ministering. You ready? Ushers, would you come right now? This is your opportunity to turn in that connection card. Turn it in. Ushers, come forward right now. Team, would you begin leading us in that song? After the container passes, that's your invitation to stand and to sing to God.
Day to day, all creation sings your praise. You move me like the wind and waves with your love. Your voice is like a roar, a sound I can't ignore. You reach through space and time. Your hand is guiding mine, Lord of all eternity. Magnified is your Your hidden glory in creation, now revealed in you are Christ. What a beautiful name it is. What a beautiful name it is. The name of Jesus Christ, my King. What a beautiful name. You didn't want heaven without us, so Jesus, you brought heaven down. Oh, my sin was great, your love was greater. What could separate us now? What a wonderful name it is. What a wonderful name it is. The name of Jesus Christ, my King. What a wonderful name it is. Nothing compares to this. What a wonderful name it is. The name of Jesus. What a wonderful name it is. The name of Jesus.
Thank you so much for joining us this morning. We hope that God was able to minister to you through today's worship experience. If there's anything that you would like us to pray with you about, we have an awesome prayer team that would love to join you in prayer. You can send your prayer requests at prayer@a2church.org. Or if God has done something amazing in your life through A2 Church, we would love to hear your story. You can share that with us at yayGod@a2church.org. Finally, if you would like to partner with us in ministry, you can give at a2church.org/give and choose the best giving option that fits you. Again, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We hope that you will join us next week.